All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Mondays Down South. This is a different podcast. As you can see, there is no Evan and no Cy. This is actually a podcast I wanted to create to, hopefully serve as an inspiration for anyone who wants to create a podcast themselves and learn a little bit more about the editing process. So as the self-proclaimed chief editor of Mondays Down South, I figured I'd walk you through the application that we use to record, which tool do we use in the editing room, and then how do we push our content out to various social media platforms. So those are really like the 3 points. I'll get you in and out of here in 10 minutes, and hopefully you guys enjoy. Felt just, this would be a fun thing to do. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize my screen. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with our recording platform, which is called Riverside. So this is not a plug, by the way. This is not an ad. This is just a tool that we speak very highly of and we love sharing with people. Riverside, we've been using this for about 3 years in our 5-year existence. And what I really like about this tool is it allows us to set up the display. So we typically like the 3 vertical bars, but if we have a guest, we'll actually do a quad box. But what's really interesting is Cy, Evan, and I, we all use different equipment. So we use different cameras, we use different audio equipment. Like I use my AirPods, Evan uses his headphones, Cy kind of uses a mixture of the two. But what you can do after you record the podcast on this tool is you can normalize audio level, you can determine the video resolution, whether it's 1080 or 4K resolution, and you can make sure everything's consistent so that when you export, it's just one very clean file that you can use in the editing room. So, just to kind of quickly walk you through this, we recorded a couple days ago, just talking about week 2 in the NFL. We exported a couple of videos, and then once we export, you can essentially just download this. And once you download it, it's in a MP4 or a movie type of file, and that sets it up for a perfect editing round through Final Cut Pro. So I love Final Cut Pro. I'm editing on my MacBook Pro as we speak, and it is an Apple proprietary tool, but it's more complex and it offers more variation than the iMovies of the world, but it's also not too complex like the Adobe Premiere Pros, and it's certainly less expensive. So if you're trying to create a podcast, you don't know which tool to use, I would highly recommend Final Cut Pro. Once again, not a plug, just one of my favorite softwares. And one of the reasons it's my favorite software is because of its magnetic timeline, which is at the bottom of this screen here. So here's the download file. I'm just gonna throw this onto our timeline, and boom, here we have it. This is our hour plus long podcast that we had last week. What I then typically do is I will add the intro and the outro. And what's important here, before I even start marking this up, is I find that having a consistent audio level is the first thing that you should do. So I'm just going to play the intro video, and you're going to see how loud it is. Right, so we want to move that down to I typically go like minus 12, minus 13, and then I pull our audio up to 12. That kind of normalizes it. And then I'll go kind of to the very end. I'll do the same thing with the outro. So after I record, I'll actually go through and listen back to the podcast like at 1.25 speed. The reason I do that is very rarely will Evan, Cy, and I have a perfect podcast where we don't need to really mark up anything. There will be the occasional, we'll have like a long-winded take where the audience doesn't need to be hearing that. One of us will curse, pretty bad if we're, mad about our team. And, hey, this is a family-friendly podcast, so we typically try to scrap some of that stuff out. So what I like to do is I listen to the podcast about at 1.25 speed, catch some of the errors, make sure everything's kind of smoothed over in the editing room, and then I go ahead and I export this file right here, export it. And once I export it, it takes, roughly here, we'll just walk through it right now, overreactions. And because this is an over an hour podcast, it typically takes about 30-40 minutes for it to completely render and then export into its final form. And once we get that file, which I send to my SSD drive, because that is 1 terabyte of data, it's a solid state drive, takes a lot of pressure off of the laptop from an editing perspective, and it allows the computer to just function as it is without all of this high resolution video trying to render and export on the machine. I do it on an SSD drive. Takes a lot of pressure off of the computer, and I highly recommend you do something like that when you get into the podcast game. So once this file saves to the SSD drive, I then just pull that file from Final Cut Pro and push that onto YouTube. And we use a variety of platforms, so we use X or Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And once we get this full-length video onto the YouTube platform as one of our episodes, then I'll actually go back and I will mark specific sections where I feel like we have really good hot take clips. We typically generate about 6 or 7 of those per episode, but what I find really important with that is after we get the episode pushed onto YouTube, I can then go back and dissect the episode for those 7 clips so we can get those pushed out to all the various social media platforms, which is where we get more interaction and more content. And we just feel like it's a better way to grow our business is through those clips. So I'll actually show you how I do that. So we'll just we'll go halfway through here. I'm just going to hunt for a clip.
We could have rolled right into the Eagles-Chiefs game because
Chelsea looks washed. He basically cost them the game this week, and it's basically just have Mahomes run around and try and create plays, and that's not doing a whole lot for them. And they can't run the ball, so the defense is a little bit older. So,
all right, well, that's a perfect clip right there. So as you can see, I click the M as in Mary button on my keyboard, which stands for kind of mark. And as you can see, there is a mark icon there. So after I finish editing the entire podcast, I'll about 6 or 7 of those marks, and then I'll go back and I'll actually take that clip. So here it sounds like Evan is talking about how the Chiefs, may be overrated this year, or how they're not going to finish top in their division. And so that sounds like a pretty good clip that could create both agreement and controversy when you post it across our social media platforms. So I would go in, create that 20-second clip. Then I would do the exact same thing. I would click export, and then I would run that, save that to my SSD drive, and then push that onto YouTube as well as X and some of our various social media channels. So once we get the file to fully export, I'm gonna go to our YouTube channel right here. Bear with me. How are we doing on time? Yep, a couple more minutes. And once we go to YouTube, I'm going to navigate to our account. I'm just gonna click view our channel. And as you can see here, this is just our YouTube channel. This gives us like a pretty good view of what are our ratings, which videos tend to do better than others, what is our listener retention ratio. So if we have an hour-long podcast but people are only listening an average of 20 minutes, where do we lose our audience? This YouTube studio shows us a lot of really cool content, but most importantly, what it allows us to do is to upload our videos. So once we edit in Final Cut Pro, I then click upload video, and then this will allow us to pull from a file. Hang on one sec. I don't know why it's doing that. There we go. Select files. I don't know why YouTube's tripping out right now, but let me just try this again. Create, upload video. All right, it's gonna allow us to select our file. We're just gonna go ahead and click our week 3 pick'ems video, which is the one I was showing a little bit earlier. And now this is gonna push this content onto YouTube within a 1080 resolution, which is actually pretty good. We can also edit in 4K, which is what we've done in the past. It just takes a long time. We typically haven't noticed the quality difference too much between 1080 and 4K. But overall, YouTube accepts both. We can create our title, in our description, we'll just do test 1, 2, 3. And we just go through the process of pushing this onto YouTube. That's typically how we edit. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Let us know in the comments if you have any questions about editing or you want to get more involved. I'd be happy to answer them. I figured this should just be a quick tutorial to kind of show you the 3 different elements of a Mondays Down South podcast. One being the recording element through Riverside, then the editing portion through Final Cut Pro, and then pushing that content out across different social media platforms such as YouTube. So really appreciate it. And let me know if you have any questions.